would you mind turning me up, Matt?
All of us, sorry.
space is a safe zone, a safe environment for us to just open up and be vulnerable. So we thank you again. We give you back all the praise and the glory. In Jesus' name.
I think my family was just, they were always there for me.
I think my parents.
I mean, I would just go to my closest friends.
Youth leader or my mentor.
Humans were made to live in relationship with one another. We live in families, hang out with friends. We learn best from other people. Relationships can help calm us down, make us feel safe, and help us when anxious feelings start to make us feel stuck.
I think definitely my mother. She went through a lot of the same things I did. What she says to me about that really helps.
My grandmother is very, very supportive when it comes to school or how to deal with my stress.
I have 2 brothers and 3 sisters. So I usually talk about the problem with my brothers and sisters. Yeah, so sometimes when I do have to get stuff done and everybody's coming into my room, my mom's telling me to wash the dishes, my brother's telling me to play games with them, I'm like, can you please leave me alone? I'm trying to get this stuff done.
You'll start to realize, parents aren't perfect. They're not always gonna know what to do.
For example, if my mom would try to fix something for me, she would then get anxious. And then it was this isn't helping anyone.
I grew up in a family where it was you do what you do because you have to do it. You didn't cry about it. But I think one thing I always knew was I always had a rock. My mom was always there.
When I was in high school, my parents were actually going through a divorce. So just going through that while also trying to focus on my own things.
My family, they definitely live up to that older generation stereotype of you don't talk about generically mental health issues or at the basic level emotions that you're feeling. To their credit is that there's a silent love that they commit to. I'm thinking about all the times that my father would wake up in the morning or make the time available to get me to places, let me do my things, so to speak.
I come from a Latin American family, and so going away for college was not our custom. And I wanted to do what all my friends were doing, so my anxiety also just had a cultural piece to it. Did I want to be my own person and do what my friends were doing, or did I want to honor what was my family's idea of what you should do after high school? And I applied to schools out of state and then ended up actually staying home. My dad always made himself available, so if I was having a really overwhelming day, just his paying attention to what was happening was really helpful.
Definitely, there are times where you go to them and either it's because they're too busy or whatever, and you tell them and they just give you nothing. They are a resource, but when they fail you, which sometimes they do, you have to just follow through to another resource that you have.
I think counselors and teachers really help. Sometimes you won't have the best counselor or teacher, but you will find one that you can really open up to.
The people you're comfortable with, the people whose opinions you respect and honor.
My mom's friends, they were very helpful too. And then just my closest friends, even their parents sometimes would help too.
There's definitely the individuals who would come help lead youth group ministry stuff or tutoring most of those young adults, because I went to a Korean American church, happen to be also Korean Americans. And so having people you can relate to helps.
My youth leaders specifically were the second parents that I had and could go to and just ask for prayer or ask for help or just vent. So having relationships with adults outside my family were really helpful to help me navigate my anxious times in high school.
Relate with something that was said in that video? No, I can't. I think, to be honest, for me, one of the thing that gives me the most anxiety is family members' relationships. Right? And I think last week when I had you guys fill out the things that stressed you out the most or questions that you guys had, a lot of students that are sitting around in the chairs that are just like you wrote down stressors like family, relationships, So it's not just one of you, if you're like, man, I'm the only one that struggles with my family. Because not everyone, but a lot of you guys wrote down stressors in relationships with your family. And relationships with others. Can I tell you guys that this week has been one of the craziest weeks of my life when it comes to relationships and anxiety that comes with it? Not to I don't want to get like too nitty gritty into it, but this week has been so crazy. If you haven't found out, on Sunday, we're opening up that awesome big building out there for adults to come worship indoors for the first time in like 8 months, right? It's been such a long time. So our church staff has been going crazy trying to get everything accomplished so that we can be ready to open that building this Sunday for your families, for you. If you guys don't know this yet, for the next couple of weeks, you as students are going to go to worship with your families, and you guys are going to worship together. But this week has been so crazy trying to get all of that stuff done, the anxiety, the pressure that's been putting onto that, and then also Jordan and I and Teddy are flying to Montana tomorrow morning for a wedding, right? So it's like I've got this work over here that is adding so much stress because of all of the things that are coming on, but then it's like my full week load of work that has to get done by 9 o'clock tonight, because tomorrow morning or tonight after midweek, we're driving to Las Vegas. So I have this family stress over here that's like, I want to love my wife and I want to honor her and I want to make sure I'm not working on our vacation, but then I got to make sure I get all my work done, right? And a lot of you guys are in that same boat. You guys are like, man, I want to play video games, right? Who likes video games? I like to play an occasional video game here and there. I've been known to play some Call of Duty or some FIFA or some Madden or MLB or just video games in general, right? Or who likes reading books? I know there's people that like to read books. I like to read books. I don't do it well because I don't have a focus or concentration, right? But for the things that you like to do, right? You enjoy them, you love doing them, but then mom and dad come knocking on the door saying, hey, I need you to unload the dishwasher. Hey, I need you to take your brother and your sister to their practice. Or, hey, I need you to get out of your room and come spend family time. There are things that happen in every single one of our lives, and you guys dictated that. You guys said that last week in the stressors that you wrote down. Every single one of you struggles with relationships in your life, whether it's a relationship with a loved one, whether it's a mom or a dad or a brother or sister or grandma or grandpa, or if it might be a feeling relationship, whether you have with your boyfriend or your girlfriend or that guy that you're talking with, or for the girl that you've been kind of stringing along for the last couple months. We all have relationships in our lives that at times can add stressors in our lives, and they don't stop after you turn 18. Sometimes they get even worse because there's more responsibilities with that. In this series that we're going through, we're talking about the anxieties that come into our lives based off of the cultural things that we're going through in our lives, the technology that is at our fingertips, the academic stress that we're having to deal with, the competition that we have with the self-comparison. Remember last week, one of the questions that you guys were supposed to talk about in your life groups were about social media and the comparisons that we have in our lives with other people. And to kind of recap last week, we talked about the 2 questions that we should be asking ourselves when it comes to anxiety in our lives. Remember, it says, where is God at work in the midst of my anxiety? And what might God or my anxiety be trying to tell me? Every single one of us, and you saw it, I saw it, we have stressors in our lives, like schoolwork, family relationships, driving. Someone wrote driving on the freeway. Hey, I was there at one point. Driving on the freeway for the first time is crazy gnarly. If you've never done it before, you'll be there one day. And you're like, here I am driving on the freeway at 45 miles an hour, and someone's zooming by you at 80 miles an hour. That's stressful. Every single one of us, we deal with stressors like that in our lives. And those 2 questions right there, we're going to keep talking about it every single week. We'll talk about it. But one of the things that I really want to hit on today our loved ones in our lives are the ones that know our tits, right? Jordan and I have been married for 3 years. We just celebrated our 3-year anniversary a couple days ago. Jordan's awesome, and she's awesome, lovable. I'm not the lovable one, I promise you that. But there are times when Jordan knows what really makes me mad, and she'll push that button, or I know what pushes her button, and sometimes I'm like, you know what, Jordan, I'm gonna push that button. We like to say something. Jordan, what's it called when we get each other's what? Goat. Right? So when we make each other mad, she's like, you really got my goat. Right? We push those buttons, and our family members really know how to push those buttons or get your goat. Right? Who knows what gets your mom's goat at home? Or get your dad's goat? What really makes him mad? Do your siblings really know what gets you mad? Is it coming in and knocking at your door 20 times in 5 seconds? Saying, hey, come play with me. We watch kid movies all the time at home with Teddy, and the Frozen movie comes out all the time, and it's like, you want to go build a snowman? And Elsa's knocking at the door, or Anna or Fitbit, I don't know what it was, but she's knocking at that door, kind of annoying your sister, right? Does that happen with your siblings? Is that annoying? Does that stress you out? Sometimes it's like, hey, leave me alone. Sometimes I feel like that with Teddy. Hey, leave me alone. Go and take a nap. But sometimes the relationships that we have push our buttons and get our goats. And those relationships are the ones that we love the most. And today we're going to read a passage out of Luke 5. And this passage is talking about Jesus comes to a group of guys and is teaching and gets on this boat. And from that, we get the birth of Jesus' group of disciples. Read it with me. On the back screen, it's going to say this. One day, Jesus was standing beside a lake when a crowd was pressed in around him to hear God's word. Jesus saw 2 boats sitting in the lake. The fishermen had gone ashore and were washing their nets. Jesus boarded one of the boats that belonged to Simon and then asked him to row out a little distance from the shore. Jesus sat down and started to teach the crowds from the boat. So I'm going to stop it right there. I'm not supposed to stop right here. I'm supposed to keep reading, but imagine that. Here we have Jesus, right? Let's say I'm Jesus, you guys are the people, right? Everyone is crowded around, and there's so many people so that he has to start backing up, and there's nowhere to back up anymore because the lake is behind him. So he sees this boat, he gets in this boat, and he says, hey, Simon, row out a little bit so that more people can crowd in, right? So here Jesus is teaching from a boat. Can you imagine that? It's like, I went to a concert a couple years ago, and this band was playing from this little island, and then everyone else was in the water. It was really cool. That's what I think about. But as I think into this, let's keep reading. When Jesus finished speaking to the crowd, he said to Simon, the owner of the boat, row out a little further into the deeper waters and drop your nets for a catch. Simon replied, Master, we've worked all day and caught nothing. But because you say so, I'll drop the net. Right there, that's important to know and important to read because he's like, hey, Jesus, dude, I'm tired. I've worked all night long. I've worked all day and haven't caught anything. He's like, in his mind, let's be honest, in his mind, he's like, guys, Jesus, I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that. But he called the master, and that's important. He called the master, and he knew his authority. He knew who he was, but without really knowing his authority and without really solidifying that thought. But he was like, I'll trust you. But he dropped the net, and their catch was so huge that their nets were splitting. And they signaled to their partners at the other boats to come and help them. And they filled the boats that they were so full that the boats began to sink. So now these aren't like yachts. These are like wooden boats that are probably 6 feet wide and 10 feet long. These guys were like barely hanging on. Right? Like, can you imagine someone with like a bucket of water just casting water out of that boat with only more to come in because there was so much fish in this boat, right? So the boat was sinking, and when Simon Peter saw the catch, he fell at Jesus' knees and said, leave me, Lord, for I'm a sinner. And Peter and those who saw him were overwhelmed with amazement because of the number of the fish that they had caught. And James and John, which were Simon's partners, and they were amazed too. Jesus said, Simon, do not be afraid. From now on, you will be fishing for people. And as soon as they brought the boats back to the shore, they left everything and followed Jesus. That's cool. So at the beginning of this story, right? At the beginning of this story, Jesus was fine on his own, right? Jesus was fine. The dude is good. Jesus is legit God's son, right? So he's like, I don't need that, but if I wanted to, I could actually walk on that water, right? We've seen that before. He's like, hey, I can go out there. But he was like, you know what? Let me bring people into the mix. Jesus brought Simon into the mix. Who believes in their heart that Jesus could have done that alone? All right? Fair enough. Both hands. Jesus could have done that on his own. If you don't believe that, this entire book will teach you what he can do. But he could have done that alone, but he chose to do that on his own. Simon had been a fisherman his entire life. Simon's parents had been fishermen their entire lives. His grandparents had been fishers of fish their entire lives. Simon could have done this on his own. Or Jesus could have done it alone, and Simon could have caught fish on his own. Simon was just having a bad day. Right? We've all had bad days before, or it's like, man, I haven't caught any fish today. You know, some of you students have been going to fish recently at a couple at a river down by, and there's some days you guys come back without nothing. And there's some days you guys get 6, right? Or maybe you're a basketball player and you're like, man, today I sunk 30 free throw shots, or 3 3-pointers, and you're like, man, that's awesome. Or maybe you're like, I missed every shot today. We all have those days. And Simon had been a fisherman his entire life. He had learned it. He lived it. Have you ever done something like maybe for you, like you play sport, maybe you play water polo, maybe you play soccer or run track. Have you ever had like someone try to teach you something about the sport that you play? It's like, and they had never done it before. I remember in high school when I was a pole vaulter, I had a family member trying to teach me about pole vaulting. And it's like, wait, you've never done pole vaulting. You know, what are you trying to teach me about pole vaulting for? Right? Imagine this, catch this. What if Pastor Mike came in here tonight and said, hey students, let me teach you about Snapchat. Right? How would you feel about that? One, you might be like, that's a little funny. But second, you might be like, hey Pastor Mike, I live, eat, and breathe Snapchat. What are you going to try to teach me about Snapchat? Right? That's kind of the example that Simon's in. He's like, Jesus, what are you going to teach me about fishing? You're a rabbi, you're a teacher, you're this religious leader. What are you going to teach me about fishing? Jesus could have done it on his own. Simon could have done it on his own, but Jesus chose to grab Simon and say, hey, you know what? Let me teach you a little bit about fishing. And based off of that, you're going to be fishing for men. That boat began to get wobbly. Remember we talked about that last week. Sometimes our boat is unsteady and we're not sure about what to do. We get nervous about our circumstances and we just don't know where to turn to, right? And Jesus talked to him. And what happens, Jesus says 2 game-changing things to Simon in verse 10. It says, do not be afraid. And from now on, you will fish for people. I love that because Jesus did not leave Simon alone in his fear and in his anxiety. Jesus chose to step into that situation with him, to pull him out of it and teach him an outcome. Jesus is giving him a new vision for how one day the church would come together. Jesus is forming circles of people around him. And this was the birth of the disciples. These men would start to follow Jesus through his ministry. Go back right there. It says, as soon as they brought the boats to the shore, they left everything and followed Jesus. Everything, guys. Could you imagine, like right now, right? Jesus walks in this room, he's standing right here, right? And he says, hey, you know what? Come follow me. But hey, you can't go home. You can't grab your Nintendo DS or that's like really old, just dating myself. You guys don't have this. But like, he was like, you go and grab your PS5 if you have it already, or go grab your Air Force Jordans, or your shoes, your fancy shoes, or your laptop, or your AirPods, or your whatever you love that you need. Jesus came in and said, hey, leave everything and come follow me. Could you imagine doing that? And that was the birth of the circles that Jesus was teaching. And that's what we're teaching as a student ministry, the take-home sheet that you were given last week. You were asked to create circles around you, trusted individuals. Your life group leaders that you have that you're going to meet with in about 10, 15 minutes, those people love you. I love you. These people that are going to meet with you in about 15 minutes, they love you so much that, to be honest, they could probably find some cool things to do at home. But they left all of that to come hang out with you on a Wednesday night. That's pretty cool. Because they love you. They want to hang out with you. They want to make sure that you're becoming fully devoted followers of Jesus Christ. That's why we put these banners behind us, to remind you guys why we're here. That's to remind me why we are here every Wednesday night and every Sunday morning. Is to make sure that you guys are creating those circles around you. And this week in your life groups, you're going to talk a little bit about that. And last week, you guys were asked to write on those sheets, right? And you guys wrote down some deep stuff. You guys wrote down some deep stuff that, to be honest, I had no idea you guys were walking through those things. Guys, as we were typing these things up, like they're heartbreaking. Because I feel for you. I wish, like, as I was reading this, I wish I could just put my arm around you and just give you a nice Christian side hug and be like, man or girl, you got this. You're going to make it through this. And I promised you guys last week that we had a special guest that was going to come teach tonight and kind of go through something. Her name is Lexi. She's standing in the back. We're going to give her a round of applause and kind of ask her to come up here. But Lexi works at Kimball High School. Who goes to Kimball? You go to Kimball? Raise your hand. Go. Lexi works at Kimball. She is the school psychologist. Yes, I got it right. And she's going to help kind of go through a PowerPoint slide for you guys. Lexi, it's all yours.
Hopefully it switches. So talk about anxiety. This gives me anxiety. I am not a public speaker. I'm more of a one-on-one person. So if you ever want to talk after, you can get to know me as I usually am. But yeah, like Martin was saying, we had a lot of questions about anxiety and depression. So we kind of decided that it was best to divide those two monsters into probably two lessons. The first of which is going to be anxiety. So we got, like we said, a lot of things on there that it was just shocking to hear what you guys are going through. And we're really having this tonight to first, we want to normalize talking about anxiety. It's something that everyone goes through some point in their life. Whether it's something that's a diagnosed anxiety disorder or, oh my gosh, I'm freaking out about my test. We all have moments where we need to normalize this so we can talk about it and figure out how to battle this, okay? Alright, so our first slide, we have just a typical cartoon. You can't really read it though because it's really small. But we'll go to the next slide. The next slide is about stress versus anxiety. So you guys have a lot of questions about how do I know if I'm just feeling stressed or how do I know if it's something that I need to get help about. So in our job, usually we get into our stress every now and then about a test or prom's coming up or in middle school it can be something like I don't know who my teachers are going to be next year and I'm stressed about that. That's usually something you're stressed about. It's something that you're stressed for a little bit or stressed for a little while and then it goes away. Anxiety is a whole big new monster. That's something that doesn't really go away. And you can't really pinpoint, I don't know why I'm feeling this way. I'm just feeling anxious all the time. I mean, my shoe can come untied and I'm anxious about it. That's something that we're seeing in anxiety kind of rising up. It's also pervasive. It's not like, oh, when I'm at school, I feel really stressed out. No, it's I'm at home, I'm in the shower, I'm doing homework, I'm at school, I'm always freaking out. So that's when you're gonna see more of the anxiety versus stress. All right, and then I don't think our slides are switching, so we'll just keep going. All right, so some fast facts about anxiety. And really, I just tell these to you guys so that it normalizes a little more for you. Sometimes it's a little eye-opening to hear some of this. So anxiety disorders are the most common mental, emotional, and behavioral problems. That about 13 in 100 students ages 9 to 17 experience some kind of anxiety disorder. And by the time they're 18, about 31% of those can meet criteria for an anxiety disorder. Also, girls are more affected than boys. This isn't to say that girls, we just stress out a lot more. I mean, we might, but it's also the fact that girls talk about it more. Sometimes boys, they think, I can't tell anyone what's going on. That makes me less of a man. Or, you know, what are my guy friends going to think about me? So I want this to be normal for you guys too. It's normal for all of us to feel this way, not just the girls. Okay, now we're switching slides. Okay. So, now we went forward a little bit. That's okay. So, I'm going to break down into the different areas of anxiety, just so that you guys can get more of an understanding of maybe this is what I'm feeling, maybe that's what I'm feeling. So the first area is going to be the most common. So this is going to be your specific phobias. And we'll go a little bit further into what each of these are as we go as well. Obviously the red is going to be your females, and the blue is going to be your male percentages. And you can see that they're all a little bit lower on the blue side. You also have social phobia. This came up a lot for you guys, which you guys are in the prime time right now. That social phobia is a big deal. So, don't think that you're going through it alone. We also have separation anxiety, and then we have PTSD, panic disorder, and generalized anxiety. So the first one, we'll skip the slide again, but it's okay, is specific phobias. So when you hear the word specific phobia, I hope that your mind jumps straight to, oh, I'm afraid of spiders. Oh, I'm afraid of thunderstorms. Or it could be something silly like, I'm afraid of rubber bands. It's something specific that makes you nervous so much that you have a hard time coping with it when it walks in the room. Our next one's going to be the social phobias, which is one that I said was a really big deal that kept coming up in your guys' comments to us. And that's totally natural at this time in your life to really get anxious around your peers. Even though you love them, it's hard to stand in front of your peers. It's even hard at our age. But this is more, you may worry about acting or appearing visibly anxious. You might worry about speaking in front of your classmates. Right now, you might worry about showing your camera on distance learning or answering a question in the chat. It's a hard, different time to live in, but these are totally normal feelings that you guys are experiencing right now. The next one is separation anxiety. This is one where you have a really hard time separating from somebody. And yes, this is the stereotypical, the baby crying when you drop them off at daycare. But at your age, it can happen too. At our age, it can happen. Where you just feel anxious when you're not around your mom, you're not around your dad, or if you're not around your best friend, or whoever's your person to talk to, it's natural to feel a little bit anxious about that. All right, and then the last one I wanted to address, because it kept coming up in the form of school, is test-taking anxiety. Yes, this is a form of anxiety that we can talk about too. Whenever you get a test, it's natural to feel that stress, to have it. It can impact your ability to study or perform on the actual test. I know that there's students where they show up first period, it doesn't matter what happens that whole day because they have a test in sixth period and they're not going to remember anything. That is a normal feeling, you guys. And the more you rely on each other and your support network to deal with those kinds of things, the more you're going to get help on it. All right, so our next slide is, what does anxiety look like? So we're going to talk more about how you can tell you're going through it and how you can tell your friends are going through it. All right, so students may feel a sense of dread. They may have fears. They may feel as though they're suffocating. They have a lot of anticipation. They have loss of control over their breathing or their heart rate. And then somatic complaints. Somatic is you have a test that day and suddenly you have a stomach ache and you've got to go home. Or you have a headache and you cannot get out of bed that day. That's something physical that's communicating to you that something's going on up here. you're scared or you're nervous or something's got you down. So it's happening in your stomach, it's happening, you're feeling it in your body. All right, so the effects of anxiety. We see a lot of school failure, absenteeism, classroom disruption. Sometimes, they're the class clown because they're hiding something that they're feeling. The inability to complete basic tasks, family stress, and then it can also impede on your social relationships with your friends and your family members, especially if you're closing them off instead of telling them what's going on. All right, so our last kind of area that we're going to talk about are, what do we do about this? How are we going to deal with these anxieties? So the first one is a little bit loaded. We'll go further into it. It's cognitive behavioral therapy. So some of you might be familiar with that, but basically it means whatever you're thinking or whatever you're feeling is going to affect the way that you behave. And it's a vicious cycle, or it's a great cycle, because if you stop a feeling, oh, I'm feeling anxious, and then you think about it, what am I really anxious about? Am I anxious about failing school or just this one test? Then you can help your behavior. You can change the cycle by realizing that you can change one piece of that and you'll totally forget that you were worried about it in the first place. All right, relaxation techniques. So this is stuff such as progressive muscle relaxation. I know your parents have probably told you when you were little that just when you're trying to fall asleep, just try to relax everything in your body. This is pretty much the same concept. Just literally think from head to toe. Think, okay, I'm going to relax my toes right now. I'm going to relax my calves right now. And as you do that, just count to 5 in between, and you'll be shocked. It brings your mind somewhere other than the stressor that you're freaking out about. Now you're thinking about your body and getting it relaxed and ready for whatever's stressing you out. The next one is mindfulness practices. And usually I can't talk about this in my setting, but you guys have an amazing thing that you have in your toolbox. You can pray. Pray, pray, pray. Whenever there's something going on, God's ultimately in control. So you may as well pray about it. Ask Him, am I doing this right? Is this how I'm supposed to be feeling? God, please help me get through this. Just pray about it. And then also one thing that I would encourage all students to do, because it's just a helpful technique in general, is writing down things that you're grateful for. There are moments in our lives where if your parents are going through hardships, if you're going through hard times, if school is stressing you out, sports are stressing you out, there's always something that you can sit down, and I'm talking, you can write down one thing if that's all you can think about, that you're grateful for that day. You could look down and go, dang, I'm wearing a cute shirt. I am thankful for this shirt. It can be as simple as that. It'll take your mind off your stressor, and you'll think about something that you're grateful for instead, and it'll make you happy. All right, another thing is biofeedback, which you would have to go to your doctor for, but really that's just recognizing symptoms in your body. So if you are the kiddo who always gets a headache every time there's a test, that could be your biofeedback right there. Oh, I'm stressed, that's why I have a headache. Or if your stomach's always aching, or your heart's always racing, there's your biofeedback. You don't need the fancy chords to figure it out. You'll just have to do your own practices of deep breathing to figure out what works best for you to calm down. All right, parent training can also come into play. That's more so for your school and doctor. And then medication, obviously, is with your doctor. But I think the most important thing that unfortunately is not on this list, the most effective way is exactly what they just talked about in that video. They all talked about people who they turn to when they need to talk about something. And as soon as you're able to identify that person, use them. And don't feel as though you're a burden by talking to them. They want to hear about things going on, and they care about you. So really, you have an amazing pastor that you can talk to. I'm sure you all have parents, friends, siblings. Heck, you guys can go to your school counselor, your school psychologist. You can talk to your teacher, and they will refer you to whoever will really spark a connection with you. So talking to people ultimately is going to be a big helper for you guys as well. All right, the next slide is just an example of progressive muscle relaxation, but I don't think it works anyways. Yeah, it was, but now it doesn't work. Okay, so the next one is going over this cognitive behavioral therapy I was talking about. This is what we work with all the time in the schools. So like I said, it's starts with your thoughts. This is how we think about things. This is how you perceive things. If you go into your biology test and you're already thinking, I'm going to fail this thing, why am I even here today? Obviously, your behaviors and your emotions are going to be affected by that. You're going to be super nervous, and then you're going to show up to class, and you're going to be nervous, and you're not even going to be able to perform. So it's going to affect that whole cycle. So this is what I'm talking about. When we reach that point of, this is a negative thought, I'm thinking really negatively about this test right now, just change one of those links. If you're feeling something and you can't help it, if you're thinking about something and you can't help it, well then sit down and start studying. Then you change your behavior and it's going to affect the whole cycle. So that's really what we work on in the school. So if you ever go in, you guys might see this triangle, and that's what cognitive behavioral therapy is. Alright, and then on the next slide, this is something that you guys had already listed to me. So after that is, what about tests? So, test anxiety, like I said, this is a huge stressor for kiddos your age, and that's totally normal. You don't think that the person sitting next to you has never had a really hard test coming up, and on a Friday of all days. So really, I just kind of did the cognitive behavioral therapy for you guys. Change your attitude, prepare for the test, fill your brain and body, arrive early, distract yourself. Do one of those techniques I talked about. Look down at your shoes and go, man, my Air Jordans look nice today. They're nice and white and shiny. And think about anything else, and it will be shocking to you how much your anxiety will actually go down about it. And then when you're done with the test, review it, read the directions clearly, read all the questions. But no matter what, how you do on it, take time for yourself. If you're stressing out about anything, the most important thing is giving yourself time to just relax and think about things. Alright, and we should be on to the last few slides of this. So, I don't think it changed. Oh, that's okay though. We had a couple slides that mentioned more about prayer. And there's just some quotes on there that I have all around my hidden things in my office because we can't talk about God, unfortunately, in our school. But just little reminders that really help through the day. One of them is, an old saying goes, worry is taking responsibility for something God never intended you to. Trade your worry for worship and watch God make the mountain of anxiety bow down to Him. Don't worry about anything, instead pray about everything. That one's actually in the Bible in Philippians. And then worry implies that you don't quite trust that God is big enough, powerful enough, or loving enough to take care of what's happening in our lives. So kind of with Pastor Marco's story about the fishermen and thinking that, oh, who are you to tell me? But not trusting in God and not just relying on that faith that you have, that's kind of communicating that, you know what, you're not in control anyways. But ultimately, we do know who's in control. And then, perfect, there it is. And then the next slide is one exercise that actually Pastor Chris Martinez, I'm sure you guys are familiar with him, he familiarized me with this side of it. So this is something that we do all the time with kids in school. We write down things inside of our control. So you can control the way you think about things. You can control, for the most part, the way you feel about them. You can control what you wear to school on a certain day, unless your mom and dad tell you absolutely not. Things outside of your control, okay? There's the weather. You can't control that. You can't control these wildfires. You can't control this coronavirus. There's a lot of things right now that are so out of our control. And sometimes you just sit there and you go, what am I supposed to do about this? But you know what, Mrs. Mantor, it doesn't matter how many times I look at how nice my shoes are, I'm still stressing about this. Guess what? That big arrow telling you to pray, just pray about it. Because even though it's outside of your control, God's in control of it. So the more you pray about it, the more He's going to know what's going on and help you through it. Alrighty, and then we're on to our last slide, I believe.
Careful.
So that's the end, and I'm pretty sure I addressed all the questions that you guys had on the anxiety piece. The only one that I do remember that is not a slide. Somebody asked about using your left fist, clenching it to make you relax. If that's what makes you relax, honestly, you found your coping skill, and that is exactly what you should do. Everyone has a unique set of coping skills, and if it works for you, then absolutely. Maybe pray about it while you do it too. But yeah, are there any other questions that you guys had still? Okay, perfect.
about another slideshow about depression and how that kind of plays a role in our life. Thank you so much for taking the time to come hang out with us and teach us all this information. Right now, you guys are going to go to your life groups. You've got 15 minutes in life groups. I'm so sorry. I talked for a long time. I wrote like a 5-minute message and like God just said, hey, I got so much more for you to say. I don't know. But hey, I'm really thankful that you guys made it out tonight. If you have friends that didn't have an opportunity to come join us tonight, we recorded the message. We're going to post it. This slideshow that was just shown to you guys, we're going to post it on our Southwood Students website, southwoodstudents.com. If you go to midweek on the button, that slideshow will be there for you to review, look at, to just get more information, all that information that you need, okay? I'm thankful that you guys came out tonight. You guys got 15 minutes in your life groups. If you go longer, just tell your parents, please, okay? I don't want your parents to be mad at me. Life group leaders, just be cognizant of the time. Let me pray, and you guys are dismissed. If you don't know what life groups you're in, come up to the front and I'll help direct you. Life group leaders, if you have a first-time student in life groups tonight, have them scan the QR code and have them fill out the Connect card. Let me pray. Father God, we love you so much. Thank you for teaching us about mental health, God. And we pray for students to open up in life groups tonight. We pray for students to feel safe and comfortable. And Father, we just pray and we thank you for our life group leaders tonight. We ask you to guide the conversations tonight, and Father, allow your word to be spoken over our students tonight. Father, we love you. We thank you. In your name we pray. Amen.